The archons are the entities that are in charge of this material universe. And so
Mhm.
they have a vested interest in keeping you here and not ascending beyond it. And so one of their primary tools is fear, right? Now, does that mean that every fear that someone has is a direct result of an action taken by an archon? No.
Mm. Okay.
But it's more like they create the environment where fears can manifest.
Mhm. 6,000 years ago that there was a tremendous event that happened across the planet. And it was at that point where there was a repression or suppression of, our abilities, our mental capabilities, and our ability to um, lucid dream and do a lot of esoteric traveling. And so I kind of was thinking of you at the same time, going, well, he does a lot of past life regression, and we've all, agree upon the fact that um, all the history of us as a civilization, as a species, is locked up in our DNA.
Yes.
Okay,
Epigenetics, right?
correct. So is that something that you in your work have come across to where somebody has gone back that far?
I have not had a regression that's gone back to like 6,000 years ago.
Mhm.
I have had them go beyond that, and of course, sooner than that, but I haven't been in that exact time frame.
Sure. Okay. So how far beyond that have you gone? Has someone gone back?
We're talking like pre-dynastic Egypt, Atlantis.
Hmm.
Um, there's been some of those, and they're super interesting, of
Right.
course.
And so that was the civilization that she was saying existed prior to this event. And then after this event, that the technologies and the techniques and the belief systems that were in place at that time were suppressed.
What comes to my mind in that time frame is Sumeria, which was, we're told, 6,000 years ago. And it sounds like this lady was talking about, just leading up to Sumeria, you
Hmm.
know. So whatever happened just before Sumeria must be what she's referring to.
Okay. And what happened
It's a good question. My guess is Göbekli Tepe. My guess is, well, the
brought that up?
information that's being buried there or was buried there intentionally
Hmm.
um, is where we could get the answers to that. As to what it was, I can only speculate.
Hmm.
I can only speculate.
Right.
Um, Maybe this is why Gnostic wisdom is making a comeback, right?
Well, again,
One of the reasons, because we want to know.
yeah, this came up in the conversation as well. So there's a lot of threads that are intertwining here. So I mean, it was I told them when we finished their interview is that that we have somebody else coming back on because we are on the same kind of topics, but we still have so many more questions. Um,
What's
so
interesting about that is um, with all the advancements in artificial intelligence that seem to just be flying at us daily now, I think there's an opportunity here to kind of recuperate or regenerate the timeline with the
mhm,
missing pieces that we've been denied. With practitioners that do past life regressions, wouldn't it be great if there was like a past life Wikipedia or something, a central intelligence that could take in all those notes from those practitioners and reconstruct the timeline in an unbiased manner based off people's past existences? That's sort of a dream project,
mhm.
you know? How could we regenerate that, right? How far
Well,
back could
some
we get?
Well, some of the things that I've been reading is that they're actually putting some of these sacred scrolls and sacred books through AI, and it's interpreting them completely different.
That sounds like a great topic.
Yeah.
I've messed a little bit with that myself. I just put the Gospel of Judas into AI, and asked it to regenerate the missing pieces, you know. And it reads just like you would expect it to read. It reads just like you would expect something like that to go. So
So
I think it's one.
how did it go? What revelations did you discover?
So the missing pieces, they're spread throughout that short text,
Hmm.
but the book primarily is about the inorganic, but quote unquote, betrayal of Yeshua by Judas. And it's inorganic in that it was a planned event. Yeshua put him up to it, you know, because he was more advanced spiritually than the other disciples at the time, because he understood the Gnostic wisdom. He understood who Barbelo was and that Yeshua was the son of the one, and Barbelo, the son, in quotes, S-U-N is probably a better phrase for that. And then because Judas had an innate understanding of that and the other disciples did not, he was chosen to do this sort of inorganic staged betrayal.
For what reason?
So the idea would be Yeshua wanted to return to his father, but
Hmm.
he needed to be a martyr, right? So he needed to experience that betrayal, or have it appear as if he was organically betrayed, because he couldn't just tell the other disciples, "Hey, this is a staged thing. You know, he put me up to it." They wouldn't hear it. Um,
Right.
so that was the reason. Uh, it was so he could get out of body, right?
So what you're saying though then is that he lied,
I mean, I guess we have to go internally and figure that one out. You know,
right?
why? Why
Hmm.
why would an advanced spiritual being do that? I have my own opinion on it, you know.
And what's that?
Well, he was done on the flesh side. He had done everything that he had come to do. And the quote unquote resurrection was going to be a momentous event. It was another sermon that he had to get out. It was another bit of knowledge he had to preach to the masses, that it's not about resurrection into a physical body of flesh and blood. It is a continuance into a spiritual form that is, vastly superior and more fun than
Mm.
than the flesh. And so it's a promise that there's a continuance after death. And so that was there was this one last sermon that he had to get out. One last bit of preaching. And we see that last sermon, of course, in part of the New Testament as he appeared to the disciples and certain people on random roads along in the region. And then we see it in the Gnostic texts, in Secret Gospel of John, right?
Hmm.
Where he's appearing and basically saying, "Yeah, it's me. Look, check out my hands, check out the wounds. It's yeah, I know you." And there's that's my opinion, is he had one more sermon to preach and he couldn't do it in body.
Mm.
Hmm. Okay.
So it was the self-sacrifice.
Yeah,
Right.
Mhm.
yeah. As much as it's kind of a, you know, maybe has a dark side to it in that there's this plan, uh, the message is still good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That requires a little bit more contemplation then, as far as um, a grand event, which is now because he wasn't a martyr then,
Not technically.
right?
I guess if you want to get into the details, it would be, you know, did he, sort of command Judas to do this, or did he just predict to his face that he would do this? I don't think there's a meaningful difference, you
Hmm.
know, in that.
Right. Okay.
But if the martyr narrative wasn't there, would it have as big an impact?
Right.
Absolutely.
right?
I see the strength in creating that particular narrative, but
Hmm.
at the same time, if it's not a true event, then he's not a martyr.
Hmm.
Right. And so that's why Gospel of Judas is one of those interesting books that really
Yeah.
stops and demands that you go inside and really think about,
Mhm.
is it important that he's a martyr? For some, maybe, or is it important about the message of continuance? Right.
Right. But then that takes away your he died for your sins completely.
That's something else in the Gnostic wisdom, Gospel of Mary. There is no sin according to the
Right.
Gospel of Mary.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a human construct. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gosh, we can keep going.
So have you at any point in your work of past life regression brought anyone from that period of time?
Yes, I had one very interesting client who in the present life was a former U.S. Marine, you know,
Hmm.
uh, and he went back to a time along the Sea of Galilee, along the southeastern region of the Sea of Galilee, where he was a goat herder. And into his small little village came John the Baptist and Yeshua, preaching the message. And I got to see that what transpired through the eyes of this goat herder that was listening to John and Yeshua and was very moved by especially John the Baptist. He thought Yeshua was just too above his head, not down to earth enough for him. But John the Baptist, really resonated with the past life persona of this client. Unfortunately, the elders in the town were not as moved because they thought he was preaching against Judaic law and going against the Torah, and they ran him out of town. And he always, in that life, regretted never standing up to his elders in his town, and saying, "Hey, just give these guys a chance to talk. Give them some quarter." He regretted that till the day he died. And then when we took him through the death experience, and he's on the other side, he catches up with the two of them in the session. He catches up with John the Baptist on the other side. And John says, well, it's never too late to join the movement, essentially, and sent him back down to,
So let's roll that back a little bit, just because
yeah.
if people are not familiar with what you do and how you do it. So talk about, what do you mean you took them through the death experience?
So in a QHHT session, if we're in a quote unquote traditional flesh and blood human existence, which we're not always, it depends on where the subconscious takes you.
Yeah.
But if you're in a traditional past life somewhere in history, we always take them up to the last day of that life through the death event and then immediately beyond if there's something to be learned there.
Okay.
And in
So
this
then
case,
they go into another past life then?
well, not
Because
right away. They
oh, okay,
spend,
got it. The transition stage. Got it.
yeah, they spend some time in the transition stage, as you say,
Hmm.
cross the veil, and they will often go through a life review, and they'll
Hmm.
get to see, the boxes that they checked in that life and the ones that they didn't check. That's one common aspect of taking people through the
Hmm.
death experience. And then sometimes you get to sort of sit in on the planning of the next life, um, you know, where that higher self of that higher soul of that individual is helping plan. Okay, well, we got to send this former Marine back so he can accomplish X, Y, and Z next time, right? And so we'll get a glimpse of that sometimes. And
Hmm.
oftentimes, the life that they're planning is the present life.
Hmm.
And clients find that very interesting, and it explains a lot of what they've been through, right?
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we have, I think, one of the best jobs in the world in that respect because everyone's story, every single person's story, no matter who they are or what they do, is just so interesting. It's so
So
interesting.
when they come out with that, so they go through the experience with you, and again, I just want to have the audience kind of have this understanding of your matrix hypnosis process. So they come in and they do a session with you. You take them through the past life stuff. They go through this experience. You take them through that past life's death experience. I got a couple questions. Number one is, in this waking state, most people have this fear and this experience of not wanting to get to the death experience. Yet you take them in hypnosis and go through that. How did it, like, is there hesitation? Is there resistance? Like, what's that in the hypnotic state? Are you finding there's resistance to go through that death experience for the past life persona that they're experiencing?
Very rarely. Um,
Okay,
Part of that is because in this particular method, in Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnosis technique method, the client becomes that past life persona under hypnosis. So they're reassuming that identity. They're not often living it as a third person or as an observer, remembering the life. They are, zoomed right in the skull of that individual, right? And reliving it as if they were walking around during those historic times again. So
hmm,
you'll notice oftentimes dialect changes, accent changes, because they're fully integrated into that new, or I should say that old persona. And
sure.
then when we take them to the last day, if it is something traumatic, like for something that comes to mind, being burned at the stake, right?
Sure.
You'll find that the oversoul of that client will automatically detach
So they
that
disassociate
person
first.
from,
Got it.
right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
But me, I always have the best interest of my clients in my mind, and I don't want them to be uncomfortable at all. So I will detach them, and I will say, you can detach and just watch this as an observer if you want
Got
to,
it.
right?
Got it.
So there's no risk of trauma. The subconscious wouldn't allow it to begin with, and
Sure.
nor
Hmm.
would I as a practitioner. But there's a willingness on behalf of the client to experience that again, to recall the lesson that was learned.
Mm. Yeah.
Like the former version of you has a vested interest in the future version of you, knowing what you've been through and doesn't want you to forget, right?
So then the follow up to that, and so then they have this experience, they go through that, they get the learning, the wisdom, and they come out of it. Do you find, or have you experienced that there's an increase or a bump in synchronicities and their awareness of synchronicities happening in their waking life based on what they learned?
That happens a lot. Um,
Okay.
for example, with this, and some of the veteran community that I've worked with, upon or after the session, and in the weeks and months that follow it, they'll they're like the rest of us, where they'll be like, "Man, I started noticing the angel numbers everywhere. I'm suddenly seeing 1111 all the time." They start noticing synchronicities that have really always been there. They just weren't sensitive to it.
Got
So
it.
maybe it's a heightened sensitivity that comes out.
Hmm.
Hmm. So Scott, when a client comes to you, are they coming specifically to do a past life regression?
Yes.
Okay.
If they know anything about the technique, that they know that that is what it involves usually.
Mhm.
Yes,
Right. Okay.
and I always make sure that they understand, you know, first of all, I don't really know where they're going to go. I don't know if they're going to go back to Samaria or Egypt or to the 1960s. I have no idea. Neither
Hmm.
do they. Their subconscious picks that life. I
Right.
don't pick it. They don't pick it. And it might not even be the past, Ross. It might be extra dimension. It might be the future. It might be a different planet
Mhm.
entirely, different galaxy.
Right. So
So
are they, but so my question is, I mean, that answers partly why there wouldn't be any minimal resistance possibly. Um, but are they coming out of curiosity? Are they coming out of there's a, a sense of pain from my past or a blockage from my past? What is their expected outcome? I mean, for one, why do they choose to do a past life regression? And then two, what is their, in most cases, the expected outcome that they have, even though you don't know which direction it's going to go. And obviously you're saying, hey, I don't know where this is going to go, but if there is something there, your subconscious is going to probably take us to it. I'm
Right.
assuming, right? From
Yes.
what you said.
Spot on.
So we don't know where this is going to go, but what are they looking for? What is the client themselves looking for when they first meet you? Like,
It's
I'm
one of,
here to do what?
it's a great question. It's one of two things
Okay.
mostly. One is they want answers. Um, Answers to either a physical, mental, or spiritual ailment or issue that they're having.
Okay. All right.
Um, so think chronic pain, think anxiety, depression, and they want answers as to why they're struggling with it, and what's the real meaning behind it. Uh, so there's that, and then you have sort of the tourists, the ones that are just curious. They want to know where they've been and what they've done,
Okay.
right? So there's definite mix of those two. However, the first category, folks who want answers, are by far the ones that I see the most.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of a QHHT session, we call in the oversoul and higher self, and the client will have furnished me with questions that they want answered ahead of time.
Hmm.
And so think about what I'm trying to communicate here. Someone comes to me as a client, but before I ever put them under hypnosis, they hand me this list of questions that they have. I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll, I'll review the list, but oftentimes, just them handing me the list of questions sort of confirms in the person's mind that I want these answers. Well, by
Mm-hmm.
doing that, the subconscious, loads up the Rolodex and it picks the most appropriate past life to show that person, to where oftentimes the questions are already answered by the time we get through the death scene, right? They're already answered. And for whatever remains, I can ask we call it the subconscious or the oversoul or the higher self. I can ask the oversoul directly on that client's behalf. Why did you show us this life, oversoul? And it will tie it all together. Or why
Wow.
does this person struggle with anxiety, depression, or why does their hip hurt? And they'll give a plain English answer for the client, and that those plain English answers, after such a interesting journey through a past life, the client finds really enlightening because it comes out of their own mouth.
Mhm.
It's not a therapist telling them. It's their
Mhm.
own higher aspect. So if they won't listen to themselves, they're not going to listen to a therapist either.
Well,
So in um when someone's going into a trance experience like what you're talking about, I mean, time becomes this elusive thing, right? It's the perception of time is obviously altered in some way. That then for me, because when I practice hypnosis, one of the things I did was a little different. I didn't do a lot of past life stuff with clients. I did some exploration of myself and stuff like that, but I didn't do it with clients. What I did do was what I call creating future memories. So I would have them go into the future self and create a future memory that they can step into, and it becomes this almost um, this deja vu experience. Where
Yeah.
they've rehearsed it so well in the past, like, oh, I've been here, I've done this before, and because they've mentally done that. Do you do any of that kind of work with your clients too?
Yeah, I call it you just made a better term for it, deja vu, right?
Mm,
Um, as a QHHT client would experience it, it would be remembering creating those future life memories. They
mm,
remember doing it in the past. So, for example, just give you as generic of a textbook example as I can think of. If a client went back to a time, say, um, the occupation of Judea by Rome, right? Uh, and they might go off into a client might remember going off into the wilderness to meditate or to pray for an extended amount of time, a fast or something, where they could just be alone with their own thoughts. And when
Mm.
they remember doing that, they remember as they sat down to meditate or to just be isolated, they began having images come into them of a time far in the future when a version of them went in to have a hypnosis appointments and sit down. And
Interesting.
that creates what's called like a quantum bridge is the
Yeah.
loose, and it enables me when I know that bridge, then I know that link is established, when I know that I have the attention of the past life persona. It's not
Hmm.
occupied by whatever is happening in history. They're just sitting in the wilderness. So I know that their attention is on me. It's a very weird feeling being scrutinized by someone
Mm.
from, the first century, right? And I know I can have a first person discussion with that entity, with that individual. And so that happens sometimes. You kind of get to interview someone live. Dolores Cannon wrote about this in her many books about Nostradamus. She was able to
Mm.
establish a bridge between the present day clients and Nostradamus and interview Nostradamus that way, right?
Hmm.
So that does happen. I hope I answered your question, or did I just go
Yeah.
down the rabbit hole?
Well, a little bit of both, but yeah. So I mean, it's the because again, I think just as much work as we can do in the past life stuff, we can do in the future life stuff, and kind of project and kind of work things out and share the knowledge from. So instead of me here going back to the past to get stuff, I can say from my past, I can send it to the future, so I don't have to. It just gets resolved, and the unconscious can kind of take over and kind of do that. And then in that process, I think there's this, and Gnosticism talks about the veil of forgetfulness, right? It's like you go to this place where you don't even remember that you, and that's what creates the drama. It creates the stage of, oh, I had this experience, right? Because you don't remember that you planned it that way, but then it experiences, oh, now I remember, right? So it's that aha moment that happens. And I think that that's just a really cool experience that people can have, and for them to understand that when they're doing the past life stuff, that again, the time is elusive there, and you're not just stuck to being in the past. Future life stuff is just as doable. So, we just did a interview with some people that talked about lucid dreaming and stuff like that, and um, I think that there's some correlation and crossover here. So with lucid dreaming, for those that didn't listen to that interview or are not aware of it on this um, uh, session here, it's where we have the ability in the dream or altered state of consciousness to be aware that we're in a dream or altered state, and then have some control over what goes on when we're in there. So we're alert, we're aware, and that. So my question is, do you train or condition your clients to have that awareness that hey, this is not quote unquote reality, it's an experience I'm having, and so they don't get lost in the experience, right? Like how do you prepare them for that?
I always come about it from the aspect of this isn't about what you did in the future or what you will do in the future or what you did in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the lessons that you learned and took away from each of those existences. And so
Got it.
I focus on the lessons learned so that the client is better equipped to navigate the present life because that's the most important life because it's the one they're focused on at this point in time. So as interesting as these other past and future lives are, and they are, I always want to make sure that the client is prepared to have lessons, right? Because nobody's a perfect avatar, right? Coming
Mm-hmm.
into coming into the often coming into the flesh, right?
Sure.
We all have lessons, and so that's I hope I answered your question in that way.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I'm more curious about the lucid part of it, right? Do they get
oh,
lucid in there, and are they like, hey, if I'm gonna journey back to sitting with Nostradamus, can I interfere? Can I, can I, can I?
yeah. The funny thing is yes, especially when there's that bridge established. Dolores
Hmm.
wrote about this in her books in a very interesting way. When that bridge was established with Nostradamus, um, Nostradamus asked Dolores, gave her homework, and said,
Huh.
go get my quatrains, right? Tell
Interesting.
me what is happening in your recent history, blah 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 blah,
Interesting.
right? And Nostradamus it
So the
came out.
question is, did she influence him or did he influence us? That's interesting.
Right. And Dolores was very skeptical in those books of Nostradamus's predictions because
Hmm.
they weren't as doomy and gloomy as he had written about.
Mm-hmm.
And Nostradamus was apparently grateful for this information and explained that it's just but one possible timeline where it's as doomy and
Yeah.
gloomy as he wrote about. He was truly grateful. And he
Yeah.
also apologized for the cryptic nature of his quatrains because
Yeah.
he had to write them that way to avoid detection.
Had to.
You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
But
interesting.
the lucid nature of it, or the quantum nature of it, yeah. Sometimes there's you can sort of hit the pause button on a scene. I remember I did this very delicately with a client who was remembering being a commander of a tank unit in World War II. Um, Later, I would find and corroborate the events of this battle in the actual historic record, but at the time, uh, you know, the subconscious doesn't always do you the favor of starting you at the beginning. Sometimes it starts you at the end.
Hmm.
Sometimes the simulation loads and it's 1944 and the final bullet is coming your client's way, right? Already been fired. In those moments, you can hit the pause button and
Hmm.
just ask the client
Got
to stop and take a whole eternity if you want
it.
to.
Hmm.
Look around, take in the environment, and really
Right.
discuss everything before we hit the play button again. And then, if necessary, rewind. In this case, we rewound the clock from that event, like in this particular regression, 6 hours before, and got the whole lead up story, right?
So
Things
you
that
become that lucidity guide, right? So the guide for what the lucid experience is.
I would say I'm co-piloting with
Yeah.
with the higher self, right?
Sure.
Because it's piloting. I'm just keeping up as best I can.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do have, because we have all day in the session and because, they're not actually in that past life flesh anymore, we can pause, rewind, fast forward,
Hmm.
um, switch environments, and we can do
Yeah.
whatever we need to do to extract the lessons there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that one was really interesting because, uh, you know, um, it was World War II and it was an actual
Yeah.
battle that happened. In fact, you can go to the old church where this thing happens today, and it's so interesting. Yeah. I actually wrote
Yeah.
about that in my book. It's a chapter called the Tank Commander, right?
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
he could smell the cordite. He talked about, he had the whole sense coming in. He said very, very first thing he said when he got into that
Hmm.
scene was, I can smell the cordite. Man.
Wow. That's
Mind
crazy.
is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sharing some links with you guys. You know,
So
Great.
let's use him as an example. Let's use this soldier as an example, or the client.
mhm.
So when he came in to see you initially, what was his intention?
He was one of the curious group, ironically enough. He was curious.
Okay.
In the West, I think we get more of the curious group than they do in other parts of the world because, even though there's 2 billion people presently that believe in reincarnation as part of their mainstream religion, the West isn't really a part of that, right? And
Hmm.
so we get a lot of what I'll call skeptical Christians that don't believe in reincarnation and yet are surprised when they have such a lucid past life experience, right? At least they were open to it. They weren't judgmental. They were open to having the experience, and it really moved this particular client, right?
Right. So but again, though, he was curious as far as he comes in and says, "Hey, I'm just curious about my past lives or if I have past lives." And but he didn't really have an agenda on his mind as far as I'm having these kinds of troubles or I'm having memories or these recurring dreams, anything like that.
No, he was
Okay.
purely curious. Most
Hmm.
of them I get are, as you say, they have an issue or they want answers, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes the question is, they've had a paranormal experience either recently that they didn't understand,
Okay,
or
so tell us about that. Tell us about that's interesting. And the reason I'm asking these questions is because for the people who are listening, I want them to understand maybe, oh, I have that curiosity or I have that problem or I had that issue. So all right. So what kind of a paranormal experience would have brought a person in to see you?
oftentimes it's most commonly, I'll say, things that are moving around in the house, poltergeist, in quotes, type
Mhm.
of activity. Oftentimes, a loved one has just transitioned to the other side, and they feel the presence of the loved one, but of course they can't see or feel them. But things are happening in a synchronous way, or a certain song will come on that just really strikes them, and they want to know the meaning behind that experience. Did they just imagine it, or is someone trying to communicate with them? Right.
Hmm.
So those type of things are common. Then you get, or at least me, I get folks that maybe encountered some type of full-bodied entity when they were a child, right? That either scared them, or maybe it wasn't fear involved. Maybe it was like their imaginary friend, right? Very vivid memories of that type of stuff from childhood, and they want to finally be able to ask the question, who was this imaginary friend? What was it? Usually it's a spirit guide or a guardian angel.
Hmm.
What was it? And so the paranormal type of questions, hauntings. People sometimes feel uncomfortable in their house at night, and they want to know if their home is haunted. So there's questions like that the end half of the QHHT session, where they can ask those plain English questions, can help them, can assist them in bringing closure or clearing certain issues, right?
So, okay, so if somebody has like a poltergeist in their house, um, isn't that a past life? Is that a past life of theirs that's coming forward? Or is that a past life that is stuck in that dimension or trying to escape?
Depends how far down the rabbit hole that you want to go with this, but
Oh, I got
in
I got a, I got a shovel, baby.
that's why I like talking to you guys. Did you in my experience, and I don't know if my experience is uniform across all QHHT practitioners. In my experience, I'll call it the more scary or the more traumatic of these type of issues, be it hauntings, poltergeists,
Hmm.
spirits, or whatever. If there's fear involved, normally it is a manifestation of the client's own fear, because your fear has power and your fear has creative ability. And so sometimes people create these things, not that they're fake. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that they're imagining it and that it's all in their head. I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Hmm.
saying that it is a product, it is a creative, what am I trying to say? The origin point of the poltergeist or the negative entity issue is often a client's own fear, and the fear creates these things.
Hmm.
And that's why these things don't go away oftentimes if they leave or sell their house and move to a different place or whatever. It follows them because it's attached to them. It's theirs. They
Right.
created it. And so they can release these fears under hypnosis. They can release the need to create those things once they learn the lesson as to why they created it in the first place. So again, I don't think that's uniform. That doesn't lay neatly across all situations, certainly. But in my experience, that is what I've come across is fear-based entities. And that's not to diminish them and say that they're fake. They are not. They are actual things that the client is experiencing.
So is that like in Gnosticism talks about archons, right? Is that and for those that know, archons are forces that keep us enslaved. Is that kind of like the archons? Is that the shadow self, limiting beliefs? Is that what's going on?
It's very interesting that you bring that up. I love Gnostic tie-ins. Um,
We
so
have no
the
idea.
yeah. If I had an org chart, and I actually do have an org chart, and maybe I'll bring it out for you guys one day,
Hmm.
of the sort of Gnostic hierarchy of
Hmm.
entities going all the way up back to source, right?
Oh, that'd be cool.
The archons are the entities that are in charge of this material universe. And so
Mhm.
they have a vested interest in keeping you here and not ascending beyond it. And so one of their primary tools is fear, right? Now, does that mean that every fear that someone has is a direct result of an action taken by an archon? No.
Hmm. Okay.
But it's more like they create the environment where fears can manifest.
Mhm.
Um,
On
And
purpose.
yeah, because
Right.
you know, it's the in video game terms, they're the level boss, right?
hmm.
They're the boss at the end of the old side-scrolling game that you got to get past.
Got it. In our terminology, we call them sentinels.
What was that word?
Sentinels.
Sentinels.
Oh, Sentinels, yes. I like
Hmm.
that. I
Yeah,
like that.
that's what we teach our clients, is the sentinels.
Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
So sentinels are things that prevent you from intentional or unintentional, prevent you from getting to your next level of evolution. And so one sentinel could be, what we call a concerned sentinel. Concerned sentinel is someone or something in your life that truly has concern for your well-being, but don't know how to support or empower you beyond it. So they come out with, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't do that because you might get hurt. And so it dissuades you from actually doing that thing, right? And so it's important for us to be aware of the different types of sentinels that are in our lives. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's things that are there that lock us into the limitations that we've conditioned ourselves to become okay with. And once we realize what they are and their purpose, then it allows us to relate with them differently and not give them the control they used to have.
Right. And that is one of Yeshua's primary messages in a lot of these Gnostic texts, is fear not.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most common theme in not just the Gnostic text, but even in the biblical text, is fear not. These are fear-based entities, fear-based beings that have no power or control as long as you don't fear them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
like there's
another
common ground.
sentinel is a jealous sentinel, right? So a jealous sentinel is something or someone that is actually they're so self-centered, they're jealous if you're stepping ahead or doing better, and so they want to sabotage that and bring you down to their level, or that they in some level see that if you achieve greatness, then they don't have the excuse for not achieving greatness themselves, because if you did it, I should be able to do it too. So there's all these things, these forces that can prevent you from going and taking the next step of evolution. And if you're not aware of them, they control your life.
And isn't that a lesson for everyone? Because I
Oh
know
yeah.
even myself back when I was a normie, I shudder to think
Yep.
how reactive of a posture I was living life,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I'm reacting to things. I'm not being proactive, and that
Yeah.
you're susceptible to fear. when you're in that
Yeah.
Absolutely.
reactive state.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
Sentinels became a kind of a key aspect of our training, because once people understand the whole concept behind it, throughout the day they're like walking around with a flashlight. They're going sentinel, sentinel, sentinel. So if somebody comes in, mom or dad, says, "Oh no, I don't want you to do that because da da da." Well, is that out of loving? Is that a caring sentinel, or is that could be a jealous sentinel? A parent that doesn't want to see their child succeed more than they do. So, but nevertheless, though, it shines that light on them and just diffuses their power.
Sure.
Yeah, and
More,
you'll appreciate the where it came from, Scott, is that it came from the movie The Matrix, right? So the idea is that the Sentinels are going down and trying to keep everything at status quo
Mhm.
and doing whatever they can. And so you've got the Sentinels within the Matrix, which is the creepy crawly guys, and then the Sentinels outside the Matrix, which is the Mr. and
Agent.
Mr. Smith and his gang. So you've got internal and external Sentinels that are going on all the time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, that really resonates. And in many ways, there's no worse or more pertinent or more important battle than the battle against the status quo, right?
Yeah.
And you're speaking
Mhm.
my language, guys. I
The
love
Yeah.
it.
internal status quo and the external status quo.
Yeah. And changing the external by looking at the internal one first, I would imagine, right?
Mhm.
Well, you can do both.
But
Once you
but
understand what's going on and their positive intentions, then you can do either side. You can change it externally, and then that creates an internal reflection, or
Mhm.
you can change it internal, change it as an
Yeah,
external reflection.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I love
So
that.
so you have your external, which could be that jealous coworker, and says he's trying to maintain his status quo by controlling you. And then in
Okay.
turn, by recognizing that, you're changing your internal status quo by shining your light on him and not letting and realizing that you have the power greater than he does, he or she. So I mean, there's so many different dynamics. If we did a some sort of a chart on that, it would be mind-boggling. Um, but it's just constant. It's this cycle through it. And again, you can't eliminate the sentinels. You can identify them, and you can again, but you can eliminate their effect on you,
The impact. Yeah.
the impact that they have.
Yes. Man, that again, that resonates. Both of the things you said, because Yeshua would talk and preach about how these beings have no real power. Once you know their process
Yeah,
and what their primary function is, they they're I don't want to say laughable, but they're no obstacle,
yeah. So we give them their power.
right? And they
Mhm.
must yield to your authority once you assert it, right? From a place of confidence, not from a place of desperation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Man, you guys are I love these enlightening discussions. It's wonderful.
Mhm.
All right, so we are again running on into our hour. So let's take a few moments here and then share about a little bit more about your book and tell people a little bit about that. We
And
will
you've
share
got a
all the
really
links
cool promotion coming up on that book too.
and your
So
promotion. Yeah, so let's talk about all that, and we'll share all the links in the chat and in the comments. So just go ahead and tell us about what you want to share, and also your product line too, because last time you talked about that a little bit, and you were sold out, and I think last time we checked, you were still sold out. So have you got new stuff coming out? What's going on with that?
So we do have some of the medium and large size hoodies in stock. We do have some of
oh,
them. They
all
do
right,
move
cool.
fast.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe we have a couple smalls, but yes, promo code Ross still applies. So if anyone wants, a medium hoodie, a large hoodie, if you want a small hoodie, feel free to use promo code Ross there, and we'll get it out to you.
Yeah, and we'll pop up some images of those as well. So it'll be really cool.
Mhm.
Great, appreciate it.
Hmm.
And as far as the book goes, this is a interesting. The thing that's unique about Quantum Intern Year One is that I was an intern, right? So it describes sort of that humble white belt journey. If I could use a martial arts motif, what's it like when you really are in the learning phase when maybe you're not the best and you don't really understand what you're doing. What's that like? And so I'm very transparent about these first year sessions that I did, these past life regressions about not only what I did correct, but what I did incorrect, so that anyone else wanting to learn the modality can avoid some of the mistakes that I made. So
Right.
that's one appealing aspect of it that I think is different. A lot of practitioners will write books and they have amazing sessions and they're full of great esoteric lore. But I know for me, when I was a normie looking at this stuff, I'm like, yeah, but what was it like when you had your third session, right? Right? What was it like then? So the other thing that I think sets this book apart, aside from the humble beginnings journey, is that I put research into it because I come from a research background. So, for example, I found one of my clients remembered being involved in a historic train wreck in 1894 is what I learned. The circumstances they were describing being on the train as it wrecked, I was just taking so many notes and I'm like, wow, this is going to be good. I wonder if I can find anything on it. And yeah, I totally did. I found the train wreck, I believe. You'll see the old newspaper clippings in the book. You'll see the research that I have there. And so, for research junkies that want to say, oh, yeah, but did that really happen? Well, wherever I can, I show actual research in the book. So that's another
Mhm.
appealing aspect of the book that I think sets it apart. And then for everyone else, these first year sessions were just so amazing and convoluted and riddled with esoteric knowledge, both on planet and off planet, um, extra dimensional, and I think those, it's very entertaining to read about. That sets the book apart. So, and then I guess the last thing about the book is that I ordered the chapters in terms of like most easiest to grasp to like most difficult to grasp. So
That's cool. Great idea.
so uh, I really did my best with the structure of it, and there's a lot of heart that went into it, and
That's great.
I hope to do a year two book. When I'm no
Mhm.
longer, those sessions I was no longer an intern, but they're
Hmm.
every bit as amazing as the first year. You guys hear the
Mhm.
thunder? We got storms going on outside.
All right.
And
So,
you
what
got a promo you said on the book or something? You're doing
Yes.
promo?
right.
Oh, so for anyone who buys the hardcover or the paperback book, here's an example of the paperback um, from Amazon, and sends me a screenshot of their receipt or whatever, and leaves me a review. That person is eligible to attend a free group hypnotic regression on Zoom on
Nice.
August the 9th. So if they want to experience an online Zoom session with me, they can.
Oh, that's great.
It is not a QHHT session. I have to, because those are in person only, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's an online group regression with me, and I'd love to see that room chock full of, book fans. And
Awesome.
How long does a QHHT session generally last?
so they're in person and they're between generally 5 and 7 hours.
Wow.
So the reason for that is many, many reasons.
Hmm.
Maybe Gary can relate, but I, as the hypnotist, have to build rapport and trust with that
Yeah,
individual.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so if I don't, they won't get very far down past alpha if they get into it, if let alone theta. So
Right.
we always go through a exhaustive interview. I'm one of those rare guys where I say, "Tell me your life story." And depending upon how old the person is, If they're very young, that's a very short story, right? If they're only 18 years old, there's not a whole lot to say. So then it's going to be a shorter session. But, if someone's middle-aged or an older individual, the interview is going to be
Mhm.
well. And I
Mhm.
love the stories, and I'm here to listen, and I'm here to empathize with the clients, and I want to hear every detail. So
So
that's
one of the
why it takes a long time.
so one of the things that we run into a lot doing these interviews and such, and talking with extraordinary people like yourself, where you're you're on the boundary, you're on that edge of what's possible. But people have or have been conditioned by society, by media, by television, by movies, et cetera, et cetera. So, what are, if any kind of risks in doing a QHHT session?
There's absolutely no risk. And you're right. Some people come in with preconceived notions about what hypnosis is and what it isn't. I guess that's a risk, in that maybe there's a misunderstanding, but there's never a risk to the client. The client's
Mm,
subconscious will not allow that client to be harmed in any way at all, nor would I, the practitioner.
right. All right, good.
So
And you would establish that through the rapport building and all that kind of stuff, anyways, prior to. So, are you doing just, and this is more just techie stuff from the hypnosis side of it, are you doing fractionation then? Are you putting them in, getting them out, getting in and out through that whole 5 hours? Or is it a one time go in, go deep, and just keep them deep?
after the interview, which is, just a conversation, the hypnosis portion is 2 hours, and they're in it for the full 2 hours, and
Got
they're
it.
and they're in deep.
Got it.
We take them through a past life, if they're in a past or a future life or an extra dimensional
Mhm.
life, whatever, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that session, after we take them through the death, we call in the subconscious. This all
Got
takes about 2 hours. After the 2 hours, then we wrap up. I bring them out of hypnosis
it.
and we talk about what we learned for about an hour.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. That's good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. This is very exciting.
All right. So those of you interested, you can connect with Dr. Scott and see if you can arrange something. So do you do them? So you don't do them virtually though? Any of them virtually, one on one, like Zooms or anything?
No, we don't do QHHT sessions virtually.
Hmm.
Dolores Cannon was very much against that.
Yeah,
She passed in 2014. Her reasons were, well, what happens if the person's internet connection shuts off?
and you're
Um,
screwed. Yep. Yeah.
how can they recline back and be super relaxed? And how are you going to be able to watch their eye movements and their body ticks?
Sure.
Uh,
Yep.
you know, and the technology in 2014 certainly wasn't there, and I would argue it's probably still not there yet.
Yep.
You
Mhm.
know,
Hmm.
uh, so she was very much against in online QHHT sessions.
Right.
However,
Yeah, I think it's
group regressions can be done online. Yes.
yeah, yeah, because you're a little bit more generic in the communication and yeah,
And we're only going into alpha. We're not going too far down into theta.
Right.
yeah.
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 Cool.
Uh,
Well, maybe
Man, I
that's
really
on the
love talking with you
horizon with the
guys.
technology. Having this technology like this to be able to allow people to do this on a grander scale would be extraordinary.
I agree. I think, you know, part of what do you want to call it? A human being's ascension, our higher path, maybe a way to change everything around the globe is recognizing the value of the theta state and everything that you can learn in theta.
Mhm.
Because when you're in theta, you're not worried about typical terrestrial things that seem to dominate the news, right?
Mhm.
You're in a higher state of mind, and I think salvation, if I could use a Gnostic term,
Mm.
for many begins with theta state.
Mhm. So, Scott, what do you think? I'm gonna wrap it up here real quick, but what do you think about the future of human evolution? Do you think that we're on a cusp right now? We're on a transition trajectory?
Yes, I this is a this is a great rabbit hole to end up with, but yes, I do. I'm very optimistic
I've got
about the
another
future.
shovel right here.
I am very optimistic about the future, partly because I'm very skeptical of fear. Anytime someone tries to make me afraid of something, my radar goes up, and I'm like, "Oh, I see you, archons. Oh, I see." I see the influence
Yeah.
here. I can see the
Hmm.
matrix code, right? You're
Yeah.
not, I, that is because of that. And I think there's more of us now than ever before. And my gut instinct tells me that whenever the media is trying to tell us everything is dark and gloomy and it's war and it's oppression and it's mass death and destruction, I know the opposite is true at a gut level. I know it. I know it. And I know that it's just really just their dying plea to please be just a little more fearful, just please. And so the more they turn up the heat, the more I know that their days are numbered, if not already gone.
Mhm. Well, you're more, we as a population are more controllable, afraid
Yes.
in their fear.
Yes.
We look,
And
we start
I
to
think
look towards the people in charge for answers and are more willing to do whatever they say to make the fear go away.
right. And Gnostic wisdom and even these hypnosis sessions, it's all about confronting your fear and overcoming it. And it's making a comeback nowadays, gentlemen.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
fear's days are numbered, in my humble opinion.
All right. I can't think of anything else a better way to wrap this up. So, Scott, thank you very much for this part two. We're looking forward to part three sometime in the near future. And maybe we'll just go and complete Gnostic in part three.
That's
Is
awesome.
one of my favorites. So we appreciate you spending the time. Good luck with the book. This is going to go out right away. Um, Everyone, we cannot recommend this book more. So get out there,
Absolutely.
get one, learn, understand, expand yourself. And if you have any questions, you got all the contact information for Scott and his office. And that's it. Thank you for joining us on the Infinite Wisdom Experience, and we'll see you next time. Bye
Be
bye.
well, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Thank
Scott.
you, gentlemen. I appreciate you both.
You
It's
too,
our
man.
pleasure.